Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Today on the program, we have got so much to get into. Yes, the Titans put the pads on for the first time at practice. Yes, Cam Ward threw 2 interceptions. And I know that's what people are going to talk about. And of course, that's what we're going to talk about. Plus, what else we saw today from practice. Plus, I did not go to practice on Saturday. And I didn't go to practice on Saturday. Number one, I'm a veteran. So the way I look at it, I take veteran days off. But also the way I thought about it was it's the third practice on Saturday. And then they put the pads on Monday. And all anybody wants to do is talk about what happens when the pads go on. So I'm just going to go Monday anyway. So I did not go to Saturday's practice, but apparently Will Levis, like leavened bread. Will Levis went up to the podium and said he thinks he's a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. And of course, we'll get to that. First, though, I do want to tell you, before we get into Cam Ward's 2 interceptions, and I can already see you people lining up wanting to talk about it, I do want to tell you about our presenting sponsor. That is Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home. They can do the exact same for you. Did you know that Hiller has been taking care of my home since I first got a home in 2018? That is actually correct. And I would never think of using anybody else. I saw somebody in the comments on Friday's show said they had a bad experience with a plumber. They called Hiller. I'm just going to tell you, when it comes to Hiller, you are not going to leave unhappy because Hiller has the happy you'll be or the service is free guarantee, which means if there's something that is not right, they will make it right with the customer. That's right. I love Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They take great care of my home. They can do the same for you. That's Hiller. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Okay. Cam threw 2 interceptions today. One right over the middle of Amani Hooker. He was rolling to his right. Cam apparently thinks he's Superman. He can throw it across his body right to Amani Hooker, who took it to the house. And then he did it again. Right to Jermaine Johnson. And I already know what's going to happen. I already know. I haven't even looked at the chat, and I probably already know what's going to happen. We're going to see the defense of, well, it was practice. Again, the usual suspects. Cam had a perfect practice today from somebody who wasn't even at practice. And then there's what is Jared Stillman going to say about this? A to Z Sports put out a tweet when Cam threw that second interception. Second Cam Ward INT of the day. Jermaine Johnson this time undercuts Cam throwing a late over the middle while scrambling. Gotta learn. Andrew says Stillman is going to have a field day with this. I'm going to tell you how I feel. And I'm not going to do the contrived, everybody in the media that said Cam had a great day today is lying to you. I'm not going to do that, though I don't believe Cam had a great day. But I'm just going to tell you how I feel. And however you want to react to it, if you want to think that I'm being a hater, if you want to think I'm being too soft, if you want to think whatever the hell you want to think, you can think. I'm just going to tell you how I felt. I understand that it is practice. And it is the first padded practice. It is not late August where there are 4 practices to go before they get ready to play the Jets. It's not even a preseason game where it's a defense Cam hasn't seen before. It was a practice on August 3rd. And people will tell me that practice makes perfect. Again, our buddy, Tic Tac Titan, he said Cam was perfect today, even though Cam threw 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 to Amani Hooker. Well, Vince Lombardi used to say, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And I generally believe that more than, well, he'll learn from that. So I'm going to tell you what I thought about the two interceptions. I thought they were both completely inexcusable, and I think both interceptions are the kind of things that happens when a young quarterback thinks he can come in here and play the way he played in college and play with that backyard football mentality and starts throwing across his body over the middle of the field. That's just what I think happens. In fact, I'm surprised that didn't happen more often during the season last year. Because when you're running to the right and everybody's running to the right, and then you turn around and you try to throw it over to the left, you can't really see what's going on over there. Maybe you have an idea in your head as to what's going on over there, but you don't know. But a lot of people are just going to shrug it off. And a lot of people will be saying, well, it's practice. He's going to learn, and he won't do that in the game. He'll watch the tape, and he'll move on. To that, I will say, I hope. That's how I feel about the interceptions today. I hope. I hope he learns, and I hope he moves on. But there's a specific play in Will Levis's rookie season. And I'm going to use Levis as the example here because I lived Levis's rookie year and his sophomore season because I was on the radio doing 4 hours a day talking about Will Levis. I can't tell you about Jordan Love's training camp in his second year or his first year as a starter because even though I watched the Packers when they were on TV that year, I did not watch every single thing that Jordan Love did. So I can't tell you about the other guys. I can only tell you about your guys that I've watched every day. Will Levis's rookie year, there was a game at home against the Texans. They wore the Oiler throwbacks, and Mike Vrabel came out in the Bum Phillips hat, and they lost to a team quarterback by Case Keenum. But there was a play in that game that I still remember, I still highlight, and I kept saying going into year 2 for Levis was going to be the indicator for me as to whether or not he was going to make it. And it was a play late in the game when it was close. I think the Titans still had the lead. Levis rolled to the left. He had plenty of time. And there were 2 defenders and there were 2 receivers, DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks. And Treylon Burks was running down the field and DeAndre Hopkins stayed. And both Texan defensive backs stayed with DeAndre Hopkins. And Will Levis threw the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, and it got intercepted. Meanwhile, Treylon Burks was running down the field by himself with nobody else out there. The reason I bring this up is because I kept saying in that offseason between 23 and 24, while you people were out there saying, Levis has learned he's going to be a star in year 2, and Callahan is going to coach him up to be Joe Burrow. When you people were doing that, I kept going back to that one play against the Texans. And I kept saying, I hope that when that moment comes up again for Will Levis, he'll be able to take a deep breath and not just say, I got to throw it to DeAndre Hopkins, and just throw it to DeAndre Hopkins. But he'll take a second, and he'll take a deep breath, and he'll look, and he'll see Treylon Burks running wide open, and he'll throw the ball there for a touchdown. I don't know if he's going to do that or not, but that's going to be what determines whether or not this guy can play quarterback in the NFL. And with Levis, the game never slowed down. That's why he did the dumb shit he did when he panicked, because the game never slowed down. There's really no way to tell whether or not Cam Ward is going to be able to pick that up, metabolize what happened today, and not let it happen again. I was bothered by Robert Saleh's comments after practice, in which he chalked up the Hooker interception to a bad decision that we just can't have, but the Jermaine Johnson interception to an elite play by Jermaine Johnson. Well, that's convenient. When your offense plays your defense and your defense stops your offense, it's either good defense or bad offense. And Robert Saleh wants everybody to know this was good defense. And that might be the case. It might have been an elite play by Jermaine Johnson. But guess what? Other teams have elite players too. When you play the Eagles in week 2, you're going to be throwing on probably the best pair of corners in the NFL in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Every single one of these teams has elite players, even you with Jeffrey Simmons. So when it comes to Cam Ward throwing that interception and Robert Saleh making the excuse that it was an elite play by Jermaine Johnson, I already don't like that. The reason Cam Ward threw the interception, the reason he turned the football over, is because Cam Ward thinks he can run to the left, have no idea or run to the right, have no idea what's going on the left, turn his head, and then just throw the ball and not see defensive backs there who are just going to pick it off. It's dangerous. Throwing across your body over the middle of the field. And Saleh did say, hey, it's different when it's one-on-one on the outside and you know there's 2 guys up there, so you can just throw that ball up there and hope that Carnell Tate or Alec Iomanor can go up and get it. It's different. But I just don't know if the game is going to slow for Cam and he'll be able to learn from it going forward, or if this is just how he plays. And there's really no way to know until we see tomorrow's practice and we see the scrimmage on Friday, and there's the joint practices between the Titans and the 49ers, and then there's the preseason game, and then we'll get more data points in there. Again, I didn't totally check out on Levis in the offense until the Seahawk joint practices, which I believe came at the 3rd preseason game. And I remember watching the Titans not be able to get a first down against Seattle's defense. Brian Callahan was completely unconcerned about it. And so were you people, by the way. But that was the moment for me where I'm like, this team is fucked. Because when you're that late into training camp, when it's late August and there's not that many reps to go, and you can't get a first down against a good team, not a great team, well, there's just not going to be a lot of room for improvement. So, again, if you ask me, Jared, what did you think of the Cam Ward's day today? I would tell you he threw 2 interceptions, both of which are completely unacceptable and avoidable. If you ask me, do I believe the 2 interceptions today foreshadow what will be a terrible second season for Cam Ward? I'm not going to go there because he can learn from those. But if you're asking me to assume that Cam Ward will learn from those mistakes and that Cam will take that out of his game, well, I can't go there either. And if you want me to pretend that Cam Ward's 2 interceptions today indicated a perfect practice, then you just don't know me and you just don't know intellectual honesty. So that's the first thing on the interceptions. Now, somebody apparently replied on Twitter. Two-Tone Ronde says, I think even Stillman can't ignore just how good he was outside of the interceptions. Again, I don't know what practice Two-Tone Ronde was watching. I was watching the actual practice. And so I saw Cam throw the football today, and he connected down the sideline with Carnell Tate on one, and he connected with Iomanor down one, and it was fine. But there wasn't a throw he made today in which I was like, man, Ryan Tannehill could never make that throw. And if I'm drafting you number 1 overall to save my franchise, and I'm turning down the Giants trade, and I'm comparing you to Mahomes, I'm going to need some throws that Ryan Tannehill couldn't make. There was one throw he had to Ridley where he threw it behind Ridley, and Ridley jumped up and made a tremendous catch in the air. But I don't know, did Cam throw it behind Ridley to keep it away from the defender? Did Cam throw it behind Ridley because he threw it behind Ridley and it was just a tremendous catch? That I couldn't tell you. But I didn't think Cam had a very good day. And I also want to address the idea that maybe going around, again, I don't know, it's your football team, not mine. But there's this idea that outside of the 2 interceptions today, Cam Ward played great. Well, number 1, I didn't see great. I'm not even sure I really saw good. I saw fine. It's fine. The second thing is this. Again, let's view this practice as a game. Just like I said with Will Levis and the Seahawk joint practices where they couldn't get a first down. If this was a game and Cam Ward was fine, his regular stat line, 21 of 31 for 212 yards and 2 interceptions. And those were the 2 interceptions he threw, including a pick six to Amani Hooker, you lose. So if Cam was good the rest of the day, and again, I thought he was fine. I wouldn't say that he was good. But if Cam was good the rest of the day, and this was a game, and he threw 2 of those interceptions, it would be a bad game. Call Ryan Tannehill and ask Ryan Tannehill, hey, if you have an okay game, but you throw a couple of interceptions, can that cost you the Super Bowl? Because that's actually what happened. So, again, I can sit there and I can make excuses. I can make promises that I won't have to keep, i.e., he'll learn from this. That was a good thing that he threw that interception. I could be doom and gloom. Again, just like old buddy said out there after he threw the interception, Stillman is going to have a field day. He could go on and talk about how Cam sucks and Cam's a bust. And I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. If Cam did this in a game, you lose. I would love to know what the actual percentage is when it comes to quarterbacks who throw 2 interceptions in a game and how often they lose. Because what a lot of you guys like to do is you guys like to play the outlier game where you like to say, Drake May threw 4 interceptions in a practice, Jared, and look at Drake May now. What's the percentage of games in which a quarterback throws 2 interceptions and wins the game? And I remember when Mariota was the quarterback and Floyd and I were doing the show together, and Floyd talked about how Mariota can't turn the ball over. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, for the Titans to win, Mariota can't turn the ball over. And I'm like, Ben Roethlisberger turns the ball over and his team still won. Tom Brady turns the ball over and his team still won. Again, Dan Marino and Brett Favre threw a bunch of interceptions. And Floyd said, but those guys can make up for it. So when you can throw for 330 and 3 touchdowns to balance out the interception you threw, you can live with it. Cam Ward right now cannot live with 2 interception games. This team cannot win if he throws 2 interceptions. So if you want me to sit here and pretend that everything was great outside of those 2 interceptions, I won't do that because we don't get to do that in a game. We don't get to see the Titans lose because Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions against the Bengals and say, well, it's okay because if he doesn't throw the 3 interceptions, the Titans probably win. No, your ass is at home. So that's, again, I'm not too worked up about the 2 interceptions because I do believe that Cam can learn from it. I don't think Cam will learn from it. I don't know that. But he can learn from it. And if we're 2 weeks from now, a month from now, if Cam is still throwing across his body and throwing it to the other team, then we got big problems. Then it is what it is. And he is who he is. But I am willing to give him the chance to show progress and growth. So that's the first thing, the 2 interceptions. And we'll get to your reaction on those, and we'll do that before we get to Levis because we have got to get to Levis. I do want to talk about what else went down today at practice. If you had to ask me, I would say the defense outplayed the offense today. The offense did have their moments. Calvin Ridley had a great catch today. The one guy on offense who keeps showing up is Alec Iomanor. I said this after the second practice, that if I had to give an award to somebody for the first 2 days of practice, it would have been Alec Iomanor. Now, it's only the first day with pads, and Alec Iomanor, for the most part, is playing with the number 2s because Calvin Ridley and Carnell Tate are outside with the 1s. So Ridley's getting the ball from Trubisky some. He's getting it some from Cam. But he's with the 2s, and so he had a big touchdown grab today, but it was over Micah Robinson, and Micah Robinson sucks. But the thing about Alec Iomanor is when he bust on the scene last year, he was kind of a reliable receiver who was not a great contested catch guy, not very big, though he's not small, and not very fast, though he's not slow. He doesn't have Chim DK's speed or Carnell Tate's hands, but he was a solid player last year. And I kept saying, when it came to Alec Manor, I kept saying, he reminds me of NWI. And I say that as a compliment because NWI was a number 3 receiver for the Titans for the most part of his tenure, and he kept finding his way on the field. And I think we can all agree, even throwing aside the 9-touchdown aberration he had his last year, where NWI just caught a touchdown every game, NWI was a very good player. He's a very solid player, a solid Titan. He wasn't a great Titan. He wasn't A.J. Brown, Derek Mason. He wasn't in that second group, Drew Bennett and Justin McCarron's, but he was good. He was a solid Titan. And I thought Alec Manor was kind of the new NWI. And if you get NWI's production over his Titans career for a 4th-round pick, that's a good 4th-round pick. So I was pleased with Alec Manor. What was a little too much for me last year was people saying, we drafted a number 1 receiver. And I'm like, whoa, guys, calm down. Number 1 receiver. When I think number 1 receiver, like Justin Jefferson is a number 1 receiver. Alec Manor is not going to be Justin Jefferson. But what Alec Manor has done so far in training camp is he has showed up every day and he has made play after play after play. And I can't tell you each time who's throwing him the ball, and I can't tell you each time who it's against. All he's doing is what's asked of him. He's getting open and he's catching the ball. And so I have been very impressed with Alec Manor, and I do think that through the first week of practice, I'm willing to say he might be better than what I thought of him. He might be stretching that NWI comp a little bit. Now, I'm not going to go to the Justin McCarron's comp or even a Drew Bennett comp. He's not as big, and I don't think he's as fast as Drew Bennett was. But I have been impressed by Alec Manor. The other guy that I've been impressed by is Jermaine Johnson. He had a nice interception today. I am optimistic about the defensive line, and I am optimistic for 3 reasons. Number 1, I'm optimistic because the Titans have put their money there. They have invested on the defensive line. Simmons, Franklin Myers, they paid the money for Jermaine Johnson to dump off T'Vondre Sweat. They drafted Keldrick Falk in the 1st round. So that is real investment and real money on the defensive line. Number 2, I have faith in the defensive line because Robert Saleh's style with the defensive line is a lot like that Jim Washburn style that I knew as a kid, which was it doesn't matter if you're Javon Curse or if you're Joe Salavea, you're going to get out there. He's going to ask you to go get the quarterback. You're going to hit the running back on the way to the quarterback if they hand him the ball, but you're going to give it everything you've got, and then you're coming out. And I think that way works. And I would do that even if I were the Texans. With J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney and Whitney Merciless all in their prime, I'd say, you give me everything you've got. You come to the side, we'll put somebody else in. I'd do that if I was the Texans now. I would tell Will Anderson, you go give me everything you got, then you come to the side. So I like the style. And the third reason is there is a proof of concept with Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson played his best ball under Robert Saleh. Last year, he was returning from an Achilles. An Achilles injury is the type of injury, I've never had it before, but a lot of people have told me, when you have an Achilles injury, it's hard to come back. So you're not going to be the same right away. It takes some time, and then after a while, you're back. And Robert Saleh saw enough on the Jet film to say, let's do it. And so, unlike Aaron Glenn, the head coach of the Jets, who I think is a moron, I have the proof of concept that Jermaine Johnson and John Franklin Myers are going to fit with Robert Saleh. I don't think there's going to be any issue with Jeffrey Simmons after the season he had last year. And then they can kind of rotate in everybody else because they're all going to play. Solomon Thomas, he is a good, solid role player. He's going to play. Jacob Martin, he's going to play. Keldrick Falk, going to play. Femi Oladejo, probably going to play. So I'm optimistic about the defensive line, specifically Jermaine Johnson. So those were kind of my standouts today. Again, I'm sure other people saw other things. As far as the quarterback play is concerned, somebody asked about that. I mean, Trubisky had a terrible interception, ball tipped at the line, intercepted. Levis had an interception where he just threw the ball right to the other team. So they all threw the ball away. They all had interceptions. It's just nobody's telling me that Will Levis is the next Mahomes, except with maybe the exception of Levis. Nobody's telling me that, no, our franchise is going to go from the outhouse to the penthouse because we have Mitch Trubisky. So you're riding or dying with Cam, and today Cam threw 2 interceptions. And if you're riding or dying with Cam and he throws 2 interceptions in a game, you lose. The good news is today wasn't a game. It's early August, which means he can learn. The bad news is a lot of you are just assuming he will learn, and that's not the same thing. And I've said this time and time before, I would love to talk to an elite performer, a Peyton Manning, a Tom Brady, that kind of guy. Because when I talk to elite performers in my industry, there's always a moment they remember as a young talk show host where something clicked for them. The moment for me was on this random day where Skip Bayless said that Colin Kaepernick was better than Mariota, and I wanted to start the show on it, and Floyd was not having any of that. I don't care what Skip Bayless says. And I looked up at the clock, and I was like, how am I going to get a whole segment out of this? And somehow my mind just went to, but Floyd, that's how people think. And we just started this conversation, and there were loaded phone lines, and it blew up, and that was just a moment for me. Maybe today's practice will be that for Cam. But I can't make that assumption. I can't do it. So, when it comes to how Cam performed today, we'll see if the 2 interceptions are an indicator of what's to come, or if it's a sign that he can learn and he can overcome. Now, let's get to your reaction, because I'm sure a lot of you people have very strong reactions to interceptions that you perhaps did not see. And Belvis starts us off. He says, smash that like button. And I agree, by the way. Hit that like button. Belvis says, smash that like button. He will learn to not do that. You hope. I mean, I hope my son will learn to do certain things that he doesn't do right now. But there's no way to know. And again, it's not like Cam's a rookie. And we can say, well, it's a rookie mistake, and because it's a rookie mistake, it's not that big of a deal. That's not how this works. Rookie mistaking was for his rookie year. That was last year. As I said, Levis made a rookie mistake against the Texans in his first year. And going into year 2, I said, whether or not he's going to make it is going to be determined by those moments and whether the game slows down for him and he can breathe through it and he actually has confidence in what he's doing. Not saying he has confidence in what he's doing, but he actually has confidence in what he's doing, and he goes from there. And then Levis threw the ball to the other team at the end of the game in his first game of his second year. And then he rolled the ball on the ground in the second game of his second year. Adam in Portland says, Cam needs to work through some things, but I'm super happy we got football back. Dable needs to work in more security blanket routes. I don't think the routes are the problem. You know, again, that was Cam trying to make a play, rolling to the right, turning around, trying to throw to the left. I will say this, though, about the security blankets and the routes and everything else. One thing I absolutely hate about the way this team is constructed, and I mean hate it, is they just don't have a lot of talent at tight end. They have a lot of talent at receiver, or at least on paper, they should have talent at receiver, because Carnell Tate, the 4th overall pick, he's a legit talent. And this year was not a good year. If you were looking to draft a tight end, yes, Kenyon Sadiq was there, but you couldn't use the 4th pick on Kenyon Sadiq. There wasn't a Brock Bowers in this year's class. There wasn't a Colston Loveland or a Tyler Warren in this year's class. So, again, Carnell Tate, you took the talented guy at receiver. You wanted the talented running back. You couldn't get it, fine. But this team does not have enough talent at tight end for how I think they need to bring the quarterback along. And I don't think they have enough talent at running back because I don't think Tony Pollard can carry the ball 26 times in a game, which is what I would want the running back to do. And I am concerned about center and right guard. Though it was hard to see with the pads on today because we were stuck in the back, so you couldn't see that side view of those guys really thumping each other. There were times where the defense got there in the back. The thing that bothered me about the offensive line today is too many fat guys hit the ground. And again, working with Floyd for 5 years, you do not want fat guys hitting the ground, even in padded practice. And as he used to always say, it's always the shitty players that don't know how to practice that get your good players hurt. But the lack of talent at tight end, where I think a young quarterback really needs a go-to tight end, it does bother me. Fast Car says, Jared, let me stop you right now. If you spend 2 minutes talking about Cam's INTs, spend 2 minutes talking about his positives. If you spend 15 on the INTs, spend 15 on the positives. Be fair. Number one, Fast Car, life ain't fair. Number two, and I need you people to understand this because I feel like for some reason people don't want to admit this. In an NFL game, the number one factor in determining winning and losing is what? Turnovers. I remember we used to do the pregame show and we'd always say, okay, Floyd, what are your keys to the game? And every game, turnovers and penalties. Things you can control that directly affect the outcome of the game. The number one thing that decides games is turnovers. If today's practice was a game and Cam threw 2 interceptions, avoidable mistakes, players that a lot of college quarterbacks know not to try to make, you lose. And if it was a Monday and we were reacting to the Monday, we wouldn't be talking about, well, let's talk about the 2 completions he had because we're going to talk about the 2 interceptions he had. That's not how the NFL works. And that's not how I'm going to go about it. One person says, Bellinger, Gunner, those tight ends aren't good. I believe Daniel Bellinger. I keep messing that up. I believe Daniel Bellinger caught 19 passes last year. No, that's not NFL good. And I know they paid him a fortune, but it's like the old man used to say, you can pay a number 4 receiver, number 2 receiver money. You still have a number 4 receiver. So when you're telling me, like, wait a minute, Gunnar Helm, he's not good? Not yet. And I'm not saying, hey, they should have gone out and they should have acquired a Travis Kelce because you can't do that really. But they needed to upgrade the tight end position. And Chig, of all people who I fucking couldn't stand, Chig was their leading receiver last year. Young quarterbacks need tight ends. Now, Chig couldn't block for shit, and I don't like that. But I think they really should have dialed in at the tight end position. And I don't think that Bellinger and Helm right now on paper are good enough for what I think they're going to have to do. Because I don't think throwing outside the numbers, which is where Carnell Tate lives, which is where Alec Iomanor, who's been the best player in practice, lives, and which is where Calvin Ridley, who I think is still the same old Calvin Ridley he was 2 years ago, where they exist, that's not Cam's strength. But no, Daniel Bellinger is not good when it comes to tight end. Robert says, Cam wasn't great today, period. Source said Levis looked better today. I don't know. I thought Levis kind of sucked too. Or, I don't know. I don't want to say sucked, but I thought Levis was whatever. Again, I've seen Levis have practices where I've walked away and said, oh my goodness. Early in his career, his rookie year, he had a practice like that where Levis lit it up. And I was like, okay, time to move him up. And I remember saying this in practice, and I'm like, you can't do this, but I wish you could. I would like to see Levis get a day with the ones. This was when Tannehill was the one, and if you take Tannehill off and you say, hey, we're going to give Levis reps with the one, with the first unit, you're going to fuck with Tannehill in the offense. You can't do that. But that was how Levis was performing in training camp, and then Levis ended up getting hurt. I didn't feel that way today. I thought Levis was whatever. And I thought Trubisky was whatever. And they never let Hendon Hooker play, which should tell you what they really think of Hendon Hooker, which is he sucks. One person says, Jared, do you know who Greg Cosell is? I'm sure you do. You should really listen to how he qualifies practice plays, both good and bad. It may give you a new perspective. Life is short. Relax. Greg Cosell last year showed up to Titans training camp wearing Titans gear that was given to him by the coaching staff. I don't care what Greg Cosell thinks. That right there is an absolute no-no for me. One person said, so the game sped up for Levis after his rookie year. No, it's more likely that was a Callahan scheme issue. Here's where I'm going to push back on this. So Levis's rookie year showed some good things, but mostly bad things. If we're being honest, yes, there was the 4-touchdown game against the Falcons, including the throw to NWI that was just freaking breathtaking. There was the comeback against Miami, which was really well done. But for the most part, Levis did a lot of bad his rookie year. He was at Pittsburgh late in the game, and he was just throwing the ball to the other team. The next week against Tampa Bay, they got down by 2 scores. All of a sudden, Levis felt like he had to throw the ball down the field to go win the game. And Tim Kelly, who knows he can't pull the quarterback, starts calling bubble screens for Kyle Phillips, even though they're down by 2 touchdowns, because he's not trusting Levis to try to throw the ball down the field because Levis is trying to get back 14 points on one play, which we all know you can't do. But Levis had that anxiety in him where he felt like, I have to do it. I have to make the play. I think what happened to Levis was going into year 2, there was so much hype and there was so much pressure. And I even asked Levis about this at the time, and he replied honestly, if you make it as a starting quarterback by your 2nd or 3rd year in the NFL, you're making $50 million a year. Look at Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is making a fortune. And so there's a lot of pressure there. Everybody's telling you you're the starter. Everybody bussing with the boys has you on, and the one producer's about to take his pants off for you and everything. But you only get one crack at it. And unlike Cam, who's a number 1 pick, where the organization has invested $40 million into you, they weren't that invested into Levis. So I think the pressure got to Levis, and the game didn't slow down. And I think the game didn't slow down because I don't think Levis is that smart. For whatever that's worth. LP says Stillman hates Cam and is prepared to die on the Cam is a bust hill no matter what. If I hated Cam Ward, if this was all an anti-Cam Ward show, then wouldn't I be acting as if the 2 interceptions he threw today were definitive proof that he's going to be a bust? If that really was the agenda, and I'm asking seriously here, if it really was the agenda to come on here today like a politician who's running for office against a rival, would it not be in my benefit, again, if I was just trying to stir up the narrative that Cam isn't a franchise quarterback and that you people are way out over your skis on this guy? Wouldn't it be, hey, Cam Ward threw 2 interceptions today in practice, first padded practice, and he's just careless with the ball. He sucks. He's a bust. He's not going to be. Wouldn't that be what I'd do? But I haven't done that. I've told you. He might learn from this. The same situation may pop itself up tomorrow. He may be rolling to the right. He may want to make one of those football plays, and then he turns around and is like, whoa. Don't do that one. So that's, he might, but he might not. And for some reason, I think a lot of people just always want to assume. Brian Callahan was like this as a coach, which I think is very dangerous. Everybody just assumes it'll work itself out because oftentimes that's what you want to believe. Cody says, Jared, with the pads on, how are the big boys looking? Are they ass or do we have a competent line? Too early to tell. I am worried. about the offensive line just because question mark at center, question mark at right guard, question mark probably with J.C. Latham. But I wasn't as down on the offensive line last year as I think the fan base was. I think the offensive line got undue criticism. I mean, number one, they were behind in every game. So once you're behind in every game, you're going to be passing for most of the game, which means you're going to be in third and long, and there's really nothing an offensive line can do against a Max Crosby, because if it's third and long, you have to give the quarterback time for receivers to get down the field so he can throw him the ball, and the quarterback's going to have to hold on to the ball a little bit longer, and the defense is going to pin their ears back, and because the quarterback's inaccurate, they're going to blitz because they're probably not going to fear what he's going to do with the ball. So I really don't hold the offensive line responsible for what happened last year. I thought 2022, 2023, 2024, the line was atrocious. It was a train wreck. It was awful. I didn't think that about last year's line. We'll see with the experimenting that Mike Borgonzi has decided to do at center and right guard. Iron Pimp. Okay. When Cam is scrambling, the receiver's got to learn where Cam wants them to be. That comes with practice, Jared. We talking about practice. This is where you want to see the mistakes so that they learn not to do things. You don't want to see mistakes. Again, remember what Vince Lombardi used to say, Iron Pimp. And I assume, Iron Pimp, that Vince Lombardi probably was a better football coach than you are. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And that's Vince Lombardi's way of saying, don't come out here and fuck it up and say, oh, well, we're learning and we're going to. No. Get it right. That's what bothered me so bad. And I've talked about this 100 times. But this is what bothered me so bad about that Seahawk practice in 2024 when Levis just threw the ball right to the Seahawks on the first play of the 2-minute drill, and everybody had a good chuckle, and Callahan, blows the whistle, and here comes Geno Smith. And I'm like, okay, let the Seahawks have their, go at it and then bring Levis back out here. And next thing I know, Mason Rudolph's going out there, and I'm like, no, you need the reps. First team offense, get back out there. Get your asses out there. I don't care if you're going against the second team Seattle defense. Get your ass out there. They can worry about them, so I got to worry about my first team offense. Because it's not just practice that makes perfect. It's perfect practice that makes perfect. Goodness gracious. Belvis says, dude, your mind is just made up. No matter what Cam does, you're out. You will overstate the bad and understate the good when it comes to him. We get it. Belvis, I love you. Why would you think, again, if I'm not saying that today was a doomsday practice for Cam Ward. Again, compare me with old buddy Tic Tac Titan, who said that the 2 interceptions today represented a perfect day of practice, which again is bullshit. But he's saying, great day, perfect day. Yes, way to go. And if I was on the other side of that spectrum, where it was no matter what Cam does, it's going to be bad, then I would be banging the drum today that the 2 interceptions are concrete proof that he's a bust. And I'm not doing that. What I am saying is if you throw those 2 passes in a game, you lose. Unless Cam goes out there and does something that he hasn't done as a rookie or ever. Cam goes out there, throws for 350 and 4 touchdowns, and he has 2 interceptions. Fine, you can overcome it. But Cam has not thrown for 350 in the NFL. And I think it would be reckless to ask Cam to try to throw for 350 in the NFL at this juncture in his career. I do not have an anti-Cam agenda. I let Cam practice, then I come here and tell you what I think. And I don't think Cam's going to be a star quarterback. But it's amazing to me how it's just like, oh, man, you don't understand, Jared. You're just a hater. Maybe instead of me being a hater, maybe they should not throw the ball to the other team, which is just too funny to me. Jeffrey says, can the Titans trade Will Levis for a swing tackle? No. People don't understand this about the offensive line. And I remember years and years ago, I say years and years ago, 2 years ago, I remember they went into the offseason in 2024. So this was Vrabel had gotten fired. The offensive line was terrible. Dillard at left tackle. Ugh. Skoronski at left guard hadn't really proven anything, but you drafted him 11 overall, so go ahead, give him a shot. They had paid Lloyd Cushenberry, and who was the guard in 2024? I feel like they had a guard that was, maybe it was Brunskill or it was somebody. I don't know. But you all know how I feel about tackles, specifically the right tackle. And you all know the right tackle story. And if you haven't heard the right tackle story, I'm going to tell it again. 2015, first time I ever worked a show with Floyd Reese, I was just trying to make small talk, and I said to Floyd, how are the Titans going to be? And he looked at me and he said, we don't have a right tackle. And I'm like, that's an important position, isn't it? He goes, right tackle? So I kept saying they don't have a right tackle. And when Brian Callahan went to the combine and he said that Jalen Duncan and Nicholas Petit-Frere were going to battle for right tackle, I thought, oh, fuck. Oh, shit. Oh, God. And so I was freaking out about this in March of 24 and April of 24. And people said, but Jared, we haven't even had the draft yet. And I said, but I'm freaking out about it because these are March and April problems. These are not October problems. You cannot fix tackle in October. And they learned that the hard way. Rand Carthon said to Nick Suss, he goes, you just can't trade for a tackle. Nobody's giving away a free tackle. So when you talk about swing tackle where they've got Brandon Crenshaw Dixon and Austin Deculus competing for the job, and Austin Deculus, who was on the Chargers last year and is fucking terrible, is out there, it does make me nervous. I mean, last year, the Oli Udoh, who they had swinging around, I didn't think he was that bad. But no. We're going to put Brandon Crenshaw Dixon out there because the Titans don't take stuff like that seriously. And for some reason, I mean, if they're not going to take starting center seriously, why are they going to take swing tackle seriously? That we shall see. Radence, that's right. Radence played guard. They brought in Sadiq Charles. Whew, I forgot about that one. Okay, now to the Will Levis comments everybody heard on Saturday. So I did not go to practice on Saturday. Again, there was not going to be another show between Friday and Monday after the pads had gone on. And quite frankly, again, I don't really, the players, whatever. Saleh wasn't even, I think Saleh did talk before practice, but when you talk before practice, I mean, what's that do? You can talk after practice, tell me what happened at practice. So Will Levis met with the media. And I saw Kaharski send out a tweet in which he said Levis is refocused and reprioritized and everything else. And then I saw another one out there where Levis says he's a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. And I just put my head in my hands and I just thought, oh, God. Levis. Look, I think if you do something, especially something that is a performance job, there is a certain level of confidence that one has to have within themselves. And I'm not saying Will Levis shouldn't believe that he's a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. But I think Will Levis, just like with his mayonnaise commercial, goes out of his way sometimes to set himself up to be the butt of a joke. And it's hard to be a leader, and it's hard to be a good quarterback, both in the room, but also as a starting quarterback, and be the butt of a joke. I remember when Ryan Tannehill came into the Titans starting lineup. They played Jacksonville, beat the crap out of them. Tannehill helicoptered into the end zone against two Jacksonville defenders, and Derrick Henry was asked about it after the game, and Derrick Henry said, Ryan's balling. And I was like, he's got their respect. Stuff kind of matters. When you're Will Levis, you're doing mayonnaise commercials, you're rolling the ball on the ground to everybody else, and you're saying you're a top 32 quarterback in the NFL when you aren't even a top 4, or you're not even a top 2 quarterback on your own team. That's not a good look. And this is why Will Levis should hire me, and other players in Will Levis's position should hire me to be the director of quarterback mentality. Because I think I can spot him where I see him, and I think I know, like with Sam Darnold, who I always believed in, Mac Jones, who I've always believed in and who I believe in now, and Levis, who I'm not sure I believe in. Here's my problem with what Levis said. I don't care that Levis thinks he's one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. Levis isn't in a position to where that matters. He's not a general manager. He's not a head coach. But the truth is, Will Levis has to understand something. When you come off of a season in which you missed the entire year because you elected to have shoulder surgery and your team thinks you quit on them, and you're coming off of a season that you did play in where you were 2-10 as a starter, got benched for Mason Rudolph, and had a QBR of 25.2. You have to understand where you sit in this league. Again, he's third on his own team. This team drafted a quarterback number 1 overall and then signed a backup for $6.25 million guaranteed. They don't even take Levis seriously or want Levis. But here's why what Levis said was a mistake. Because the reality is, Will Levis is not likely to play this season. Could it happen? Cam Ward gets hurt. The team stinks. Why do you need to see Trubisky play any more games? Go ahead and put Levis out there. Sure, it's possible. Is it possible that another team will come calling and they'll trade for Levis this training camp the way Green Bay traded for Malik Willis? Sure, it's possible. Is it possible that the two quarterbacks ahead of Levis on the depth chart both get hurt and Levis has to go in there? Again, it's totally possible. But it is not likely today, on August the 3rd, for Will Levis to take meaningful game snaps in 2026. And Levis needs to know that. The second they signed Mitch Trubisky for the money that they paid Mitch Trubisky, they were done with Levis. So Levis needs to understand that. He needs to know he's going to be on the team this year, and then he's going to be a free agent. Or he's not going to be on the team, and he's going to be released, and then he'll be a free agent. Well, if you're one of these teams, and you kind of liked Levis coming out, or you think there's something still there, the way Shanahan thought there was something still there with Sam Darnold, you have to know that if you bring this guy in, he can be your backup quarterback and will be willing to be a backup and do the things that backups do. And you know what backup quarterbacks don't do? They don't go to the podium and start campaigning for a starting job. If I was a coach and I was considering adding Will Levis to be the backup quarterback, if I was Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, and my buddy Brian Callahan said, you know what, Will Levis would be a good guy to have behind Joe Burrow, and if Joe gets hurt, then you can put Will in there. I don't need a quarterback who thinks that he should be competing with Joe Burrow for the job. Wherever Will Levis is going to go, it's going to have to be as a backup first. Then you're going to have to play like Mac Jones played last year, and then you'll get a shot. I remember Ryan Tannehill when he was the backup quarterback. The Titans traded for Ryan Tannehill. He took a $10 million pay cut to be the backup of the Tennessee Titans. He shows up, John Robinson holds a press conference the day they traded for him, and he says Marcus is the starter and Tannehill is the backup. Tannehill starts to play well-ish in the preseason. Mariota doesn't. Tannehill is asked after one of the preseason games about a quarterback competition, and Tannehill just says, that's news to me. I'm the backup. Last year, Mac Jones went on the road, beat the Rams on Thursday Night Football, and was asked about a potential quarterback controversy with Brock Purdy, and he said, I'm the backup. I was brought in here to back up Brock Purdy. And when Brock comes back, Brock is going to be the guy. That's the job of the backup quarterback. Not, I'm one of the 32 best quarterbacks on the planet. That's not a backup quarterback's job. Right now, Will Levis is a third-string quarterback. The hope, if you're Will Levis, is that next year you'll be somebody's backup quarterback, and then eventually, like Malik Willis did in Green Bay, you'll get your start again as a starting quarterback. But you can't be walking around saying, I'm one of the 32 best. Malik never said that. Even last year when Malik was having success and everybody looked at the free agent quarterbacks and said, I guess the best out there is to take a shot at Malik. So, again, look, if Will Levis thinks he's one of the 32 best quarterbacks, I don't. But everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But this is not good for business if you're Will Levis. And you're hoping for one day you will get that opportunity to prove that you are a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL again. And by the way, I just today was like, where does Levis actually rank? And I think he's like the 48th best quarterback. He's like tied with, I want to say like Carson Beck in Madden football. So I just threw a list together today of 40 guys that I am sure are better than Will Levis. And this is in no particular order. I mean, I'm sure you can read into it some. You know, Ty Simpson is towards the bottom. Mahomes is towards the top. But in all seriousness, I mean, again, Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Stafford, May, Daniels, Jackson, Prescott, Darnold, Herbert, Caleb Williams, Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, Bo Nix, Mac Jones, C.J. Stroud, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray, Fernando Mendoza, Tyler Shuck, Cam Ward, Michael Penix, Jackson Dart, Joe Flacco, Tua. You know I hate Tua. Ryan Tannehill, Jameis Winston, Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, J.J. McCarthy, Ty Simpson, Geno Smith, Jacoby Brissett, and Tyrod Taylor. I think every single one of them is better than Will Levis. I also think Gardner Minshew is probably better than Will Levis. I mean, here it is on Madden football. Like, there are guys I didn't include who I'd rather have at quarterback than Levis. I'd rather have Kenny Pickett than Levis. I'd rather have Drew Lock than Levis. I'd rather have Davis Mills than Levis. I'd rather have Teddy Bridgewater than Levis. Now we're getting into the Tanner McKee range. So according to Madden football, here is who is either tied with Levis or above Levis. Tyler Huntley, Jake Browning, Drew Aller, Carson Wentz, Carson Beck, Tyrod Taylor, Shedeur Sanders, Joe Milton, Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields, Gardner Minshew, Anthony Richardson, Ty Simpson, Spencer Rattler, Jameis Winston, J.J. McCarthy, Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota, Jacoby Brissett, Geno Smith, Michael Penix, Kirk Cousins, Joe Flacco, Tua, Malik Willis, Fernando Mendoza, Mac Jones, Kyler Murray, Cam Ward, C.J. Stroud, Tyler Shuck, Jackson Dart. And it goes on and on and on and on. Apparently Madden football, by the way, has Jaden Daniels at 80 overall. Give me a break. Give me a break. Billy says Tyrod Taylor is not better than Levis. Let's ask Robert Saleh. He coached both of them, right? Jason says Jared has lost his mind. Who is not better than Levis? I mean, who is not better than Levis on this list? You mean to tell me if the cartel had your family, you'd rather have Will Levis playing quarterback than Tyler Shuck? Or you would rather have Will Levis playing quarterback than Ryan Tannehill? Or Jameis Winston? Get out of here. And then finally, I did 4 hours on this yesterday morning on SiriusXM. The Los Angeles Dodgers traded for Tarik Skubal, the 2-time American League Cy Young winner, who was the best pitcher on the market. They sent 3 prospects, none of which were their best prospects, to the Tigers in exchange for Skubal. And when I woke up yesterday morning and I was about to go on XM, all I heard was, oh, it's so unfair. Major League Baseball's cheating. Oh, it's so unfair. The Dodgers, it's unfair. First of all, it's absolutely unfair that the Dodgers have more money to spend on players than, say, the Cincinnati Reds. But that's also been a reality of that sport for over 100 years. You want to know why Babe Ruth got traded from the Red Sox to the Yankees? So the owner of the Red Sox could finance a play He didn't have the money the Yankees had. This isn't new. Now, what is new-ish is that baseball owners are pushing for a salary cap. They did in 94. It didn't work. Now they're trying it again. But it's a really intellectually dishonest argument to say that a salary cap would have anything to do with this Tarik Skubal trade, because Skubal was only owed $9 million the rest of the year. And the Brewers and the Rays, that both had better farm systems than the Dodgers, could have made that trade and accepted that money. They chose not to. And people will say, well, the Brewers can't deal their prospects and the Rays can't deal their prospects, but the Dodgers can. Again, this isn't new. The Yankees in the 2000s for years dealt prospects. How do you think they got Aaron Boone? How do you think they got Randy Johnson? How do you think they went out and got all of these players that they didn't just sign in free agency? But that's what you can do in baseball. We don't need a salary cap. We don't need to fix the game. The game's fine. The Dodgers are by far the most interesting team in the sport. And when the Dodgers get into the playoffs and they play the Brewers in the NLDS or the Braves in the NLCS or the Yankees in the World Series, they will get massive TV ratings because the entire country is rooting against them. The entire country watched last year to root for a team from Canada because everybody wanted to see the big bad Dodgers lose. And yes, the big bad Dodgers have a massive payroll. But guess what? This is baseball. The Florida Marlins in 2003 beat the then big bad Yankees. This isn't new. So I, for one, am excited. But I also don't think we need to overhaul the game and the economics of the game just because you're tired of the Dodgers winning. Just because you think that's not fair. And by the way, can I ask a question? The Dodgers catcher who hit the game-winning home run in Game 7 last year of the World Series, his name is Will Smith. He went to Louisville. I watched him play in college. He was a first-round pick. He was a solid college catcher. Somehow with the Dodgers, he became this big-time home run hitter, and now he's an all-star. He wasn't that in college. Dalton Rushing is now their catcher with Will Smith hurt. He also was the catcher at Louisville. I watched him play in college. He was fine. But he has 3 wins above replacement this year, which I never thought he was when he was in college. What are the Dodgers doing with these prospects, developing these players that apparently all these other teams can't do? And that has nothing to do with their payroll. Nothing. If it was as simple as spend a bunch of money, win a bunch of games, the Padres would be worth a shit. Or the Mets would be worth a shit. And they're not. But this is great fodder for the great salary cap debate that is coming to baseball this offseason and is probably going to cause a work stoppage next year. It's intellectually dishonest, in my opinion, to use the Skubal element to push that agenda, but that's what's going to happen. Also, go Braves. That's it for us. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends, Stillman and Company. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow right here, same spot. Like and subscribe. Presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical tomorrow at 2 o'clock.